Mounting over the number of bodies being pulled from the waters in Chicago, at least 10 in the last year alone. The latest unidentified body pulled from Lake Michigan last Sunday, and people across social media fearing a possible serial killer could be on the loose. The latest case eerily similar to at least 9 other disappearances and discoveries along the Chicago waterways. It started more than a year ago. Some of the bodies have been discovered just days apart. The causes of death for many of the victims still unknown. Is there a killer terrorizing the Chicago area, or is this simply a series of terrible coincidences? Joining us now, former CIA officer and FBI Special Agent Tracy Walder. Tracy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Natasha.
And Tracy, there are many similarities with these discoveries. Most of the victims disappeared in the late to early morning hours on weekends. Of course, they were all found in a body of water. Are there any other details that stand out to you about these cases? And as an investigator, do these similarities indicate anything?
So I believe that they do. You've got some of the other similarities that I see are proximity and age. They're all around the same age. Also, they're all the same gender. They're all male. At least last I checked, they were all male. And so I think that to me, coupled with obviously the same location, and I would suspect the manner of death is most likely drowning in all of them. I don't think that that's by accident. Again, just my hypothesis. But when you have really 4 and 5 characteristics really matching up and really being the same, I think all roads lead to a potential serial killer on the loose.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's good to know, especially with your investigator hat on, because certainly there are people who walk home late from bars and are maybe a little bit tipsy. Unfortunately, bodies of water are also sometimes the sites of suicide. But you think that this is more than just coincidence?
I think that is more than just coincidence too, because to your point, that a lot of folks had been, sort of walking home from bars. The vast majority of all of these males that were found seem to have originated from around the same place, which was in the vicinity of a bar. So what that tells me is perhaps this bar, perhaps this location where they originated from was sort of the perpetrator's hunting ground, if you will, and they sort of followed them home. And so, I think that really also points to the idea of a serial killer and sort of hunting and stalking their prey.
And let's talk about the timeline quickly as well. In April, 3 of the bodies were found just days apart. The next month, the bodies of 2 college students, 2 males, found weeks apart in Lake Michigan. Is it usual in a serial killing kind of scenario for cases like this to happen back to back?
So a lot of times that is something that will happen. The idea of killing excites them, right? And so you will see this sort of escalation, whereas you might find 2, 3, 4 killings back to back, and then it almost sort of stops for a couple weeks or a month or so. And then the killer needs their next fix, if you will, and then you'll see them sort of group together again. And so that's actually not uncommon to see in the case of serial killers.
And let's say there is a serial killer lurking in Chicago. What would the benefit be of using the waterways to dispose of the victims?
One of the best things about water is it washes away evidence, quite frankly. Really, water is key. Water takes away DNA evidence, it takes away trace evidence, it takes away biological evidence, and it really contaminates the body, if you will, and the crime scene. So really, that's sort of the number one way to dispose of a body is to really douse it in water, because what you are doing is taking away any of that evidence.
And bottom line, from what you know about these deaths, do you suspect a possible serial killer in the Chicago area?
By what I know and the evidence I'm putting together, I do suspect a serial killer in this case.
Okay. Tracy Walder, always appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are tracking.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is going to be a special edition video regarding what is happening in Chicago. And it's a story that deserves national attention, and it's finally getting that attention now. But last night, I was brought this attention, and in the middle of the night, I get a text from a dear friend of mine named Nicole, who basically is a legendary ninja monkey. That's a joke between me and her. And when she texted me this story, I looked at it and I said, wow, what's going on here? And throughout the day today, I engorged myself in this story. And the more I learned, the more revealing and horrifying this really is to the public in Chicago. And it basically details that there is a number of people being found in the Chicago rivers and the riverbanks throughout the years 2022 and 2023. And so this article, this is the article she sent me. At least 16 bodies pulled from Chicago waterways since 2022, promoting serial killer fears. Not just a coincidence anymore. As you can see, June 28th, 2023. So I had no idea about this. And, I'm a fan of true crime. And even though I don't watch the news, I'm surprised that not a lot of people are talking about this. Now, this video is basically going to be a majority of this video will be me hypothesizing, speculating about the means, the motive, and the overall theory I have regarding what is going on here. We have very little facts, and that's on purpose because the investigators from the FBI and the police, Chicago Police Department, can't really let the public know too much in order to not tip off whoever is committing these crimes. Now, the state is saying, the police, local government is saying that these are accidental drownings. Now, 16 bodies from 2022 to now, and it's actually more now, I think it's 18. If you're going to say these are coincidental, I will give you halfway. But that means there are 8 bodies that are basically suspicious, not according to the police department, not according to the FBI, right? So here we have, let's read the report. The remains of 10 men and 6 women have been pulled from the Chicago River and Lake Michigan since the beginning of last year, prompting fears of a serial killer terrorizing the community. Patterns have been noticed as the bodies have piled up, with 5 men's bodies recovered in the last 6 months. There are too many coincidences, Tracy Walder, former CIA and FBI federal agent, told the Post by phone. Walder thinks a serial killer could be at work, pointing out the cases of accidental drownings, bodies being recovered far from the victims were reported missing, and short periods during which multiple victims have been found. In a case like this, there are so many similar patterns right across the board. It's not just a coincidence anymore, Walter said. So those are the facts. And the facts go on to basically name the people who were involved. And 16 people. I'm going to concentrate on 4 men that were found this year. Joel Orduno, Noah Enos, Richard Garcia, and then Anthony Rucker, that were found within a short strip. And what I'm going to do is basically show you a map of these 4 individuals that we're going to concentrate on today. And as you can see, right here is Richard Garcia, Noah Enos, Joel Orduno, Anthony Rucker, and also a woman that was found. In most of these cases, the 5 black dots are the bodies that were found this year. The reds are 2022. Now, what we're going to concentrate on is basically why are mostly of these bodies men? Men between the ages of like 22, 23 years old to about 40, 45 years old. And they're either coming from their homes, bars, restaurants, or clubs that we know of. To my knowledge, so far, these men are heterosexuals. They were married or had girlfriends. And so here's another map showing you a wide range of people. I'll disappear for a second. As you can see in this spot, look at all the red dots right by the river. Some a little bit strange from where the river is, and one up in Joaquin Harbor, which is, north of Chicago. 1, 2, 3. There's all 12 for this area. As you can see, men, 1 woman. And so it's really interesting to note that with this happening, what can we hypothesize? What do we know, right? Let's talk about the history. How did this start? Well, it didn't start as early as this year. What happened was we have at least deaths that were going back to 2022, 2021. Take a look here. This is an article dated March of 2023. Chicago drownings, unsolicited taxi ride spark speculation, but officials say cases are related. So in this article, and I'm going to blow up the article a little bit so you can read along, sadness and anger turn to intrigue and fear. And this is what I was talking about, restaurants and bars that these people are coming from. Those emotions illustrate the feelings for some after several recent examples of young men who were reported missing, then discovered days later drowned off the coast of Lake Michigan or in the Chicago River. Some have theorized in social media posts that the men's deaths are not isolated or accidental. Rather, they are the victims of a single suspect, a theory that at this time officials say there is no evidence to support. I'm going to talk about that later. Fueling that speculation are reports of unsolicited taxi rides or free rides for patrons leaving bars and restaurants in Chicago, where drivers had offered rides outside of a rideshare app or formal taxi businesses for a cheaper cost, something consumer advocates and those in public safety strongly recommend against doing. I'm going to talk about my hypothesis later regarding this area here. While the deaths and the problem of unsolicited taxi offers have been connected in social media posts, city and county officials say there's no evidence to support that they are related. They have to say this because if this person is using an unsolicited taxi, if you're using a vehicle, his own or a stolen vehicle or a rented vehicle, and they're using it as like a taxi and they know this, well, they don't want to tip off the killer or killers. Tragic drownings. Since December, there are at least 4 reported drownings where young men were reported missing days before the tragic discovery. Let's talk about some of those. Krzysztof Subert, a 21 Polish businessman, was reported missing on December 3rd after leaving a River North party. The Cook County Medical Examiner's Office said Subert's body was recovered from Lake Michigan in the area of Oak Street Beach on December 7th. The medical examiner determined Subert's cause of death was drowning with ethanol intoxication as a contributing factor. Ethanol intoxication is, of course, too much drinking beer or alcohol. And the manner of death was ruled accidental. Peter Salvino, a 25-year-old Northwestern doctoral student, disappeared on December 17th after leaving a house party in Lincoln Park. Officials said Salvino's body was recovered off Diversey Harbor off of the 2400 block of North Cannon Drive on December 20th, 3 days after he was reported missing. This is one of the people I'm going to be talking about. Salvino's cause of death mirrors Subert's. The medical examiner determined Salvino had drowned with ethanol intoxication as a contributing factor, and the manner was also ruled accidental. Anthony Rucker was reported missing on February 13th, and Chicago police recovered his body 3 days later on February 16th in the Chicago River near the 300-700 block of South Pulaski Road. The medical examiner's office determined Rucker had taken his own life. The primary cause of death was ruled also a drowning. So, if we go back a certain ways, a couple of months prior, we started noticing an uptick in drownings, such as this article in April of 2022. 3 bodies were recovered from Chicago waterways over 2 days. Authorities said they are investigating the deaths of 3 people whose bodies were found in Chicago waterways this weekend. Chicago police said they had not determined the deaths of a man whose body was recovered from Lake Michigan and 2 women whose bodies were recovered from the Chicago River are related. So, as you can see, that we do have a history of drownings that are basically maybe attributed to what's happening. And that if we go back just a little bit and talk about what is going on here, and are these really connected, or are these accidental drownings? Are they suicides? We really can't dismiss that fact. I mean, that I wouldn't say, I don't know if it's a fact or not, or they're hiding the fact that these are actually murders because they don't want to scare the people and hurt tourism. But it's really, I'm having a hard time believing that these are basically nothing more than, you know, accidental drownings. I think this is a pattern. I think if we basically give it and say, all right, some of these are drownings, but some of these are murders, wouldn't be a terrible hypothesis to make. Um, but at the same time, we have to be careful about that hypothesis, right? We can't basically just say that, oh, my hypothesis is a fact and basically, assert it as fact. That's not fair and it's not right. It's not, you know, it's not responsible of you as a independent investigator. These could actually be accidental deaths. And until we know more, we have to give it that respect. You could be like other viral media platform channels, but I won't do it because I want to be correct in sharing my information. Now, like I said before, I am hypothesizing. So I'm careful to basically assert that. But I've already seen in the last 3 hours awash with sensationalism, saying all of these are basically the product of a serial killer or serial killers, and that we should be, living in total fear and basically just, you know, every death is going to be attributed. That's no, it's not. Okay. We already know from the medical examiner's report out of Cook County that some of these were actually suicides. And that there is no increased factor of drowning deaths in Chicago, because I've read the reports from 2019 to forward where there is no exponential rise. On average, there have been reported about 40, 44 deaths in and 44 deaths in the Chicago River, which, you would think, wow, how many accidental deaths are there in the United States? Well, if we're basically going to go by the CDC report, drowning facts, if we're going by the CDC report, there are 4,000 fatal unintentional drownings per year, 11 per day. 8,000 non-fatal drownings. That means people who didn't die in terms of drowning, which are 22 per day. So if you divide that fact into 56 states, I don't know what the number would be, but it would be about maybe 740 about. I think that's a close number. But not everybody has a huge river. I mean, Chicago River is one of the biggest rivers in the United States. So basically, we have a number of people dying in clusters in the last 2 years. This is unusual. Having an attributed death either through suicide or through an unintentional death, a guy slips and falls because he's drunk or just playing around near the river and he drowns. Yeah, I could see one, maybe two. But to have 3 or 4 found in a month, to have 3 or 4 found in the prior 2 months, that's a little bit out of step for what is reported even in the CDC reports. And so, what is happening? So, in order to describe what is happening, I have to speculate. I have to hypothesize. But let's not do that right now. In regards to the investigation into what is going on. We have the Chicago Police Department and we have the FBI, right? Now, according to a Newsweek article, there are two New York City detectives retired, Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, who basically began an investigation into what was called the smiley face murder theory. I know what you're saying. What is the smiley face murder theory? Is it the same as the happy face killer? Was it Harry Jepsen? I think it was his name. No, this is different. We're going to read the Newsweek article attributing to this. Okay. This was actually written in February of 2023 before there was a national media outcry regarding what is happening in Chicago. So in 1997, two retired New York City detectives, Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, and criminal justice professor and gang expert Lee Gilberton, advanced the smiley face murder theory. This came after three college-age men were found dead in city rivers around the same time. They believe that a string of young men found bodies in waters across several Midwestern states from the late 1990s to the 2010s was the work of a serial killer or group of serial killers. In most cases, the official cause of death is listed as an accidental drowning. Just like with these deaths. The detectives have investigated the deaths of at least 45 college-age men who were found dead in the water in 11 states in the early 2000s. As of now, Gannon told Newsweek that there are 681 cases in their database that they suspect may be connected. That's a huge number. Gannon told CNN in 2008 that he believed the men were drugged and abducted from bars, held, and possibly mentally or physically abused before being killed. Duarte said all of the young men were popular, athletic, and good students who they believed were targeted, just like the deaths as of late in Chicago, in these river deaths. The fact that you have so many of them in a short period of time, I have to say that I would say they are connected. He said the group is becoming more brazen because they know they could do whatever they want. Of course, they are picking it up, and why wouldn't they? There's no consequence to what they're doing. Gannon added that these alleged killings have been going on in Chicago since 1999. Why call them the smiley face murders? The name smiley face came from graffiti depicting a smiley face, along with 13 other distinct symbols found near the locations where they believe the murders dumped the bodies, Gannon told Newsweek. The group is actually leaving symbols behind, letting you know, yes, this was us. Come and catch us. Adding that each city has their own symbol. Law enforcement investigators and other experts, however, are skeptical. So is there a smiley face killer? In 2008, the FBI debunked this theory after receiving information about young college-age men who were deceased in the rivers in the Midwest. The FBI has reviewed the information about the victims provided by two retired police detectives who have dubbed these incidents the smiley face murders and interviewed an individual who provided information to the detectives. Supervisory Special Agent Richard Coco said in a statement at the time, to date, we have not developed any evidence to support links between these tragic deaths or any evidence substantiating the theory that these deaths are the work of a serial killer or killers. He added that the majority of these incidents appear to be alcohol-related drownings. The nonprofit Center for Homicide Research in Minneapolis also released a report debunking the smiley face killer theory due to a lack of physical evidence of a serial killer, no signs of torture, or blunt force trauma on the bodies that could point to the deaths being homicides. But this has not deterred Gannon or Duarte. Since 2008, Gannon, Duarte, and Gilbertson said these have argued that these deaths are instead the work of a multi-state gang of killers. Gannon said this is a well-structured, organized group with cells in major cities around the United States. He said each city could have been between 8 to 20 members. The motive of the group remains unknown, he said, adding that these cases are gang-oriented, adding that the group chooses a narrow, specific group to target. There's a ritualistic aspect to these killings, he told Newsweek. There is an element of hate. They are equal opportunity killers and they hate almost anybody. Gannon said the autopsies could be key to understanding whether these deaths are accidents or homicides. In his experience, Gannon said there are some victims pulled from waterways that were not very drunk and did not have water in their lungs, which would be expected in a drowning. He also said traces of GHB, known as the date rape drug, were found in some of the victims' bodies. Gannon said the odorless, tasteless drug could be slipped into a victim's drink when people are leaving the bar. The time of year these bodies are found have also been suspicious to Gannon. He said many of these bodies were found in waterways during the winter. Most people don't go to the water there in the winter's months. Chicago is an icebox. He suspects these incidents happen in the winter because no one is out by the winter, unlike in the summertime. Gannon, Duarte, and Gilbertson also created a docuseries on Oxygen about this theory called The Smiley Face Killers: The Hunt for Justice. That's the end of the article. Now, I'm going to be talking about this in just a bit, about what I think is happening here, how these people are chosen, the manner that they're chosen, the manner of death, and also suspects. The means, the motive, the suspects, and my overall theory. So far, like I said, the only facts we have are from the local and state governments in Chicago. That's all. Like I said, they can't play their whole hand because they can't tip off what they know. And I think that they know a lot more than what we're allowed to know. Now, as for Chicago, basically coming out, the Chicago local government basically coming out and saying these are not attributed to a serial killer. There's some pushback to this from the public because they're saying, well, it's too coincidental that we have so many bodies dumped in a very short amount of time and also dumped very close to one another, which is also highly suspicious and convenient, a matter of convenience. Why is this happening? Right? Why is the government, basically local government, basically trying to cover up the fact that there could be a killer in order to protect and shield their constituents? Well, it basically comes down to money, the tourism industry. I'm going to get to this right now. So what has happened in the last 2 years has relevancy to what's happening now. What happened 2 years ago? COVID. And what happened during COVID? Businesses were shut down. Chicago being a major hub of the tourism industry in the United States. In 2021 and 2020, basically businesses were shut down. 2022, we started seeing a little bit of the relaxation of the restrictions. 2023, we're back open for businesses. In fact, this year, I saw more people that I know and for people at work who have taken more vacations than I did in the last 3 years. In fact, more so now because now people want to get out because they don't know whether there's going to be restrictions or not, maybe in the future. So they're all getting out now, right? This is what's happening in Chicago. Now, let's share this article that I saw today, basically, that talks about the tourism industry in Chicago. And as you can see, visitors to Chicago rose 60% in 2022, Tourism Group says. You can see it. Now, with the summer travel season officially underway, Chicago's tourism promoters said Thursday that the city is continuing its rebound in visitor spending and visitation compared with pandemic lows. Choose Chicago said nearly 48.9 million domestic and overseas visitors who hit the town in 2022. Big, big difference compared to 2020 and 2021. And of course, we don't know how many they're going to visit this year. On amount 60% higher in 2021. You know how much money that is? The total is about 80% of the nearly 61 million visitors the agency tabulated for 2019, the last full year before the pandemic. Like I said, 2020, 2021, you know how much money Chicago lost? You know how much money New York lost? California, Texas, Florida? My God. This country lost? Probably in the trillions. It also said Chicago visitors spent nearly $17 billion in 2022, 89% of the level in 2019 because, like I said, everyone went out. Yeah, here we go, right? Open up business for granted, right? Even people who don't really go out went out. Choose Chicago released its new tourism report at the group's annual meeting. Lynn Osmond, president of the CL of Choose Chicago, said the outlook is good for an ongoing surge in tourism, not just for 2022, but for 2023. Noting high-profile events such as weekend's Taylor Swift concerts and NASCAR Street Race July 1st and 2nd, her agency is aiming for a visitor census of about 54 million this year. Now you know why they don't want to announce that there's a serial killer. You get what I mean? Because this would actually destroy the tourism and the benefits that the city desperately needs. Now, is this responsible? You could see it is a little bit. Is it irresponsible? Yes. At the same time, yes, it is responsible. Yes, it is irresponsible. What comes first? Well, according to the city, money. I don't care how many bodies are washed up in the Chicago River. Yeah, we're alarmed. We're looking into it. But right now, these are accidental deaths. If they basically came out and said these are the work of a serial killer, what would happen to Chicago? You think anybody's going to that NASCAR event in July 1st and 2nd? Do you think anybody's going to be going to the city anytime soon? I'm not saying all 59 million won't be coming, but you'll see a big drop off in the numbers, and they can't afford it. So that's the I think the major reason why that they can't come out and say that this is not the work of a serial killer. Because at the same time, there is no real evidence that we have that says this is a serial killer doing this. And like I said before at the beginning of the video, we have to be level-headed and rational and responsible in our reporting. And we have to give it the option that these very well could be drunk people, irresponsible people falling into the river. It's now about probability. Is it probable that we have 16 people found between 2022 and 2023 that were all just accidental drownings? I would say highly improbable, not impossible, highly improbable. Now, the number has risen. If we're going to go by the Daily Mail, and I don't like using the Daily Mail, but we'll talk about this article revealed 11 of the 18 people who have been pulled from Chicago waterways since 2022, including a couple found dead weeks apart in some lakes, as terrified locals demand to know if serial killers on the prowl. 18 people. Right? Chicago residents are still fearing a serial killer on the loose at the remains of at least 18 people, including a young couple who died a month apart, were pulled from the waterways in the city in just a year ago. And this is the map I showed you before. It shows you all the people involved all over. And you could, we're going to look at the maps, by the way, because this is the hypothesis part, which is coming up in just a minute. And look how close this cluster is. I mean, this is right here. And when I pull up Google Maps, you're going to see just how suspicious this all is. And if we go by the fall, winter, and spring months of 2022, 2023, and Chicago being one of the coldest places in the United States, this is not an area you're going to be walking in. So in other words, whoever is doing this, if we're to hypothesize that these are murders, I would tell you that they know this area. They know what they're doing. Okay. Let's talk about hypothesizing. Let's talk about theories, rational theories, right? And let's talk about Joel Orduno, that young man who was found on March 2023 at the 2700 block of North Levitt Street in Chicago. All right. And what I'm going to do is basically show you a map, a Google map of the street. And I only have the map I'm going to show you of 2019. It doesn't matter. That's right. Joel Orduno was found in this area here. This is the lake. I'm not saying here, it was specifically here. It's somewhere along this stretch, according to investigators. What do you see? Right? Here are some tenements. This looks like a business. Tenements doesn't look active here. Again, this is 2019. I don't know what the map shows for, I don't show more dates. Can I get anything sooner? No, I can't. I can't get anything sooner. Excuse me. Okay, so what we have here is tenements. These may not be active. I don't know. But as you can see here, what do we see? We see the river. But what else do we also see? A very high gate. Anybody catching on? If he is along this avenue, if he's along this street, now let's go down a little bit, see how far this goes, right? Road Street. I think this is a park, or are these are tenements, right? Let's assume this is night too. Okay, this is nighttime. Here's some lights, fenced off area. I don't know if this is active. Still, there's a very high fence going all the way down North Levitt Street. I don't see any breaks. I don't see anything here. Here are some tenements, active, right? Here's a street with some cars. So, and here's the entrance, but this is all gated off and walled off. Okay. Let's hypothesize and say this is where whoever did this found, right? Or is this an accidental drowning? Joel Arduino is a short person. I think he's 5'7", 5'8", very thin build, right? Joel Arduino. And just to make sure, I'm going to see if I could get he's 24, and I don't think he's very tall at all. I don't know if he's, okay, I got his height here. He weighs 120 pounds. He is 5'10". Very thin kid, very thin young man. So let's go back to the map. This seems to be about a fence that is about 5'1", 5'2", I would say. Okay, he's 5'10". He's about right up to here. That's a high fence to jump off. He has to go over this fence. If he's drunk, he ain't making it over. Right? Does he climb over and commit suicide? But his death is undetermined. Joel Arduino, right there. So, what do you think happened here? Right? All right. Let's go to the next person, right? Noah Enos. This is the most recent person. And this is the one that garnered the most attention, gave national attention. He was found on the 1300 block of North Elston in Chicago, right? So here is the Google map. September 2017. I have nothing more recent, right? North Elston. As you can see here, right here, right? Not that far from the river. So let's go drive around, right? Did he walk? Did he drive? Did he basically, where did he come from? He came from a bar, a salt bar, right? Now, the salt bar, I believe the salt bar was somewhere. There it is, Morton Salts, right? Salt bar. So how did he make it to the river? This is the street, right? Now, north of here, right north of here, can't go any further. There's the river. There's a river right here. But as you can see, I can't get to here. but he was found in this area right here. Last person he was at, he's found the river here. Noah Enos. There he is. Right there, like I said, right by here. There you go. Not that far from the river. Walk through, we don't know. We don't know. Now, his girlfriend basically said that they hired a private investigator and that they are basically going to find out either whether he was murdered or basically he died accidentally. Now, he went to the bar with a friend, but that Noah Enos's phone was out of order or low on battery, couldn't make a call. Friend lost him. The guy walked out the bar. But that's all they know. Did he walk it? Did he make it to the river? Did he walk to the river? Or, hypothesizing, was he picked up? And somewhere along the way, either gets killed or thrown in the river and he dies there. Right? I don't know, but I'm going to give you my theory as to what I think is happening here. The next person is Richard Garcia. Richard Garcia, he was found North Columbus Drive. North Columbus Drive. This is the map. North Columbus Drive. There's Chicago River. Let's drop myself off right here, please. Here's a bridge. Walk through, walkway, right? The river, I believe, is right up here. There we have it. Found in this area. If, say, he's walking along here, he could definitely just fall off or jump off. Freezing cold because he went missing. I believe Richard Garcia was found near Columbus Drive near Streetersville in April of 2023. Still would be cold. Water would be cold. It would be really cold in the Chicago River. So for a suicide, that's a bad way to go. Drowning is a very bad way to go. It's one of the most painful. Some say it's worse than burning because burning, you could suffocate really fast. You're just suffocating in the water, but you're also freezing at the same time. Terrible way to go. It's slow. With smoke, you can actually be unconscious before you even are burning under the third layer of skin. Drowning, excuse me, just a terrible way to go. Can't rule it out. Can't rule it out. But as you can see, unlike Joel Arredondo, you could definitely access the river from here. Okay. Now let's go on to Anthony Rucker. Anthony Rucker was found at the 3700 block of South Pulaski Road. Let's see what that looks like. Right? All right. Let me share the screen. This is the river. Definitely could jump over. This is really short. Really short here. I think they ruled this a suicide. As you can see, there's a South Pulaski Road. Now, I'm also going to show in a bit, right after this, my theory as to what I think is going on here. And as you could see, it's if he committed suicide, jump right over. If he's drunk, definitely could fall right over. Could definitely fall right over. You can't access this area here. It's fenced off. As you can see, this is, I don't know what this is over here. It looks like an electronic, like a company of some sort. So it's all fenced off. So if, like, say you want to dump a body, No, over here would be the most accessible. Just throw him over, or if he killed himself, he could just jump right over. Right, very accessible road. Just imagine here at night. You know, thinly lit. Again, look at the area. Not much in the way of public social life. Now, what's happening here? What's going on? Like what do we think is happening here? Right? Because I think what we need to do now is basically hypothesize about um, what we aren't being told. Is it the truth? Or what we are being told is a half truth? And the rest is basically hidden from us. So not to tip off if there is a serial killer, right? So what I want to do is basically give you my theory, my hypothesis about what I think is happening here and who I think the suspects are and the motive of why these people are doing what they're doing. If we are not to go by the narrative that these are accidental drownings, right? So I want to show a map, and I also want to show um, how accessible some of these areas are. Accessible in terms of um, if there's a car being used, which I think is happening here. Now, just concentrating on these four people and not the others, right? I want to talk about the hypothesis of the motive, the hypothesis of the means, and of course, my overall theory on suspects and the psychological framework behind it. I'm not an expert. I studied criminal and forensic psychology at the City University of New York in the early 90s. I didn't graduate. So I'm not an expert. This is my this is just my opinion. That's all. Nothing more. So don't take this, don't think that this is an expert's opinion, right? This is all hypothesis right here. Okay. I want to show you a map. I'm going to show you also what I think is happening. Okay, this is the map I showed you earlier. As you can see, all by the river, right? Here's an actual map, Google map. Here's the river. I think whoever's doing this is more than one person. These are young men. They're basically in clubs, bars, or restaurants. And my theory is this. There is either a person using a stolen car or a rental car or his own car to be used as a unsolicited taxi, or basically somebody with another person in the front seat. Now, if my hypothesis is to be sound, how would they get in the car? Right. So if they're basically in this area, and there's the salt shed, that's where Noah Enos was at. So basically, if these men were coming out of bars and restaurants, that means that there is either a person in the restaurant or bar, or these people are in the car looking at people coming out of the bar and restaurant by themselves. They don't want to attract too much attention. And they're following this person to see whether or not this person is either sober or slightly incapacitated or totally incapacitated. Totally incapacitated, the better. And if it's two men in the car, well, obviously, if the guy is drunk, he's not getting it. If he's sober, he's definitely not getting it. But what I think is happening here is that there's a guy in the front, and there's a woman in the passenger seat, and I think that they're going up to either one person outside, waiting for him, and trying to offer him a ride, saying that, "Oh yeah, we're going to this club or we're going to this bar. You want a ride?" And the person gets in the car. Person gets in the car because he sees a woman and a guy. He's not going to think, you know, a woman's involved with a spree killing. Look how many female serial killers there were. Very few. Eileen Wuornos being the most recent, most prolific female serial killer in the United States. An anomaly. So, if my hypothesis is true, to get these people in the car, they would either have to be totally inebriated and don't know what they're doing, or slightly inebriated, still having a little bit of critical faculties working, but they can make a reasonable judgment. But if they see a woman and a man in the car, you know, they'll basically try to get in or get in anyway. I'm not paying $20 for a club, right? So they get in the car and they offer him a drink. Now, the one thing about these bodies are the following: none of them, and this is really suspicious, none of them had any noticeable abrasions around the neck or throughout the body. In other words, they were not shot, they were not stabbed, they were not choked to death. No fingerprints, no ligature marks, no rope burns, nothing. 16 bodies with no ligature marks. When was the last time we had this? In a time frame of 12 to 14 months. That's what drug me to the story. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I said, "Wow, this can't be a coincidence." And I try to be as reasonable as I can. But also, there's a very ingenious, nefarious thinking going on here. This is not a stupid person. Whoever is doing this is actually very highly intelligent, very capable to know that they are basically killing these people without leaving too much DNA evidence. Now, why the river? Obviously, this is the most ingenious part of it all. The river actually washes away any DNA evidence. None of these people were sexually violated. None of these people had any ligature marks. Already, right? Less evidence. Also, we have no evidence they were robbed because Robert Garcia still had his phone. I think Noah had some money on him. So what's going on? What's the motive here, right? The river also has, while it gets rid of DNA evidence of either a hair follicle falling off, if the killers are wearing gloves, which I know they are, right? Well, that doesn't mean there could be DNA evidence like spit or follicle hairs, which could fall off very easily on a body. If you're leaving them in the street, a hair follicle could fall off your arm or on your coat, your sweater, your hoodie, whatever the person's wearing. With the river, even if he's careful, right, not to leave any hair follicles, he doesn't know the killer, right? The river will take away all that off. So there's absolutely zero evidence as to how these people were killed. Because we don't know if it's one person or two people killing them. We have no actual physical evidence of the suspects' DNA on these bodies. That's why it's an ingenious part of using the river. These are seasoned, experienced people doing this. If we're to hypothesize that these are part of a serial killing, that's right off the bat. And this is a long stretch of river, right? Long stretch, Chicago River. And so it's all the way up, extending into right by Gilson Beach. And look how far this, and that goes right into, of course, the Five Lakes, right? So here we have a long stretch of river that basically extends all the way down, right? And it goes all the way down, stretching far. So at the same time, these people are basically ruled accidental drownings because there's no matter of death. Now, what do I think is happening? Is that when they get in the car, they're offered a drink. And in the drink is GHB. And some of you are wondering, what is GHB? GHB is gamma hydrobuxy, or it's actually gamma hydrobucyrate, hydroxybucyrate. It's known as the date rape drug for women. Um, it actually produces like a feeling of like euphoria, a very paralyzing effect. You're feeling enormous, like a dream state, lucid, relaxed, very sociable, trusting of the people around you, almost like MDMA. And I've experienced that, similar to that. I never did GHB. And it basically is a nervous system depressant. So it just basically relaxes you. You're warm, you're very weary, but you're not tired. It's almost like a drunken state, but you're not drunk, but you really can't, like, you're not alert, in other words. And if you're already drunk, you're almost like in a zombie like state. Now, how easy is it to get you in the car, drive you over to a river or a bridge, and then take your body and dump it over that river or bridge, right? Because if that's what happened to Noah Enos, and he was found in North Elston Avenue, and he left that bar walking by himself, and he was picked up and driven to an area like, say, here. Well, here's a bridge. There's the river. This is the bridge that we were just on, right? That's not far from here where he left, right? Because all he did was basically found right by, not short in this area, but north of here. If he's in a car and he wants to go to the next, place of business, how far is it to the river? Well, it's right here, right along here. And he could just dump them off, right? Now, with with Joel Orduno, let's go back to that 2700 block of North Levitt Street, right? Again, I'll show it again, right? He, I find it hard to believe he jumped over this fence and went to the river. Not like I said, not impossible. But if you had two people that could just jump him over the river, that's why I said two people. One person, unless he's really strong and he's really big, maybe. This kid was 120 pounds, 5'10". He's as thin as a rail. Two people, swing him right over. Swing him right over. Is the river. What is the motive here? This is the hard part. because all these men, heterosexuals, relatively decent backgrounds, schooling, um, reasonable, successfully, had employment. There's no straight connection. These are various races, cultural backgrounds, Asians, Hispanics, whites, no African Americans yet, right? I think there's one. So what's going on here, right? Why are these people ended up dying? If we're to hypothesize that they're part of a serial killing gang, I would say, in my own undue opinion, that this is the work of two people, maybe three. I would say two. And I think they're working outside so that they're not to be seen inside the bar. I think they're waiting outside these bars and restaurants. They're using their car, their vehicle, as a unsolicited cab, trying to find the most inebriated person so they could take advantage of him, offer him a drink with GHB laced, and basically he's a zombie state, and you could actually kill him by throwing him over into the river, therefore washing away any type of DNA evidence that you may be leaving behind if you left him in the street. Now, there were two people that were found in the street. But most of these are in the river. I would look into people that have a background of either a hatred for drunks or a, a suppressed homosexual who hates heterosexual men. These are my two theories. Let's go to the first one. These people are coming out of bars and restaurants, mostly either inebriated or drunk. And since they're not being robbed, and since they're all from various cultural backgrounds, and these are young men, some of them are older, but mostly young men, I would say that I would look into people, men with a, first of all, I think also too, whoever's doing this is a local. They know the area. They know exactly where to position these bodies and throw them in the river. A transient, hard to believe. A transient going around the United States, dumping people in the rivers. No, I think these people know exactly, because they know where to go in these restaurants and bars, know exactly what to look for, and know exactly where these spots in the rivers where there's hardly any tenements or businesses around these areas where the bodies are being dumped. It's happening at night for obvious reasons. They don't want to be seen. So a motive would be, I think, that we have to look for a person who is basically using a very nondescript car that doesn't, not a Lamborghini or a big van. I don't think you need a big van. You need a small car that basically just caters to four people the most. I think this car is going to be dark, like a dark blue, a black. It won't be a white car, dark brown, maybe even light brown. So it won't be seen, and it could hide in the dark, as opposed to a bright red or a bright, white or bright red, or even light blue or green. I think it's basically a four-door. This way, um, it's not like a two-door. I think it's going to be an older model car, and basically not too old, 2010s, four-door. So basically, they don't have to push open the front seat. This would disable the person in the front seat. I don't know if it's going to be self-locked. It could be, but I would look for a dark car, four doors, and a person who has either family or basically loved ones that they hate who are drunks. Why are they killing drunk people? Because I think they hate drunks. Now, for my other theory, is that this is a repressed homosexual I'm not picking on homosexuals here. These men are heterosexuals. Usually it's the opposite. In the 1970s, here in New York City, for example, we had a serial killer preying on the homosexual community. In fact, they made a movie about it called Cruising. Al Pacino's in it. Bet you didn't know that one. Right? He plays a detective and he goes in these S&M bars trying to find a serial killer, which is based on a true story. In this case, I think it's a repressed homosexual who basically hates heterosexual men because he is being alienated from society, from prejudice to hatred. Is it a trans man? But I think whoever's doing this is somewhere in their mid 20s to early 30s. I think it's a capable person. Has to be. If you're dumping a body over a river, over a fence, you can't be an older person. And I think you need two people. And I think it's a couple. If it's a gay couple, it won't work. Two men in the car, no. I think a man and a woman basically invites the guy in the car. Oh, it's a couple. They're going to a club. They're going to a bar. They're more apt to get in the car. So I would look into that as well. But like I said, these are undue, very, less than a layman's opinion, right? So take that with a grain of salt. So I think that's it right now. I don't want to go on too much speculating. I really don't like just wildly speculating things. I really don't. I like to work with information, but since this is such a very tightly guarded case, and it has to be, because they can't, like I said, they can't show their hands for long because they don't want to tip off what they know. Maybe they don't know, and scare off the person doing this or the people doing this. So, but there are other more important, more lucid, true crime shows that you should listen to other than me. But this is my opinion about what I think is happening, and it's based on just wild speculation about the motive or the means or the suspects involved. Take that with a tremendous big grain of salt, please. Okay, don't run away and say, "Oh, it's this and that." No, don't. I'm trying to be very careful here, and that's what I think is happening here. And I think that it's happening right by the river and it's right by a freeway. Because if we look at the map of Chicago and we look at the map that is, if we look at a map of what's happening in this area, basically, you have a lot of freeways that are basically nearby the Chicago River. And there's a lot of bus stops too, but I think whoever's using is using a car. And you have, look, I'll show you real quick before I leave. For example, okay, let me get this river, okay? Here's the river. This is I need glasses. Okay, this is, I think, what freeway? 110. It is 110. Look how close that is to the river. In other words, if this person is dumping bodies all along right here, this corridor, right? This is what they're saying near Westgate. He could get right on the river, go right up. Whether south, east, west. Look how close. That's really important. If this person's using a car and he wants to dump these bodies along the river and get out of here, well, there you go. And where does that go? Everywhere. That's why I happen to think this is a local. He knows exactly where to go, knows exactly where to dump these bodies, and basically retrieve them in these streets, dimly lit streets that we saw in these maps, and look at the ways you can get the hell out of here. A transient doesn't know that. And if we're talking about 12 to 14 months time, transient won't know the area that well. in that short amount of time if we're to suspect that these are part of a serial killers. And this is amazing. I mean, this is really, dump, get out. It takes minutes, 5 minutes tops, right here, 5 minutes tops, 5 minutes. 10 minutes, you're out of the area. Look at this. Look at this. No way. I think these people know exactly what they're doing. So, in other words, local, dark car, 4-door. That's my hypothesis. Means of motive. You know, that your opinions would mean just as mine, probably even more so. Okay, but I think that's what I would be looking at. And to the residents in this area of Chicago, take great care. If you stumble on my video, take great care of yourself. Travel in groups. Don't, if you're going to drink, really stick with each other as close as you can, because this is actually very troublesome, very worrisome, because I don't think this is a coincidence. And I do think this is a pattern, and a pattern that is basically going to resurface in fall and winter again this year, because there's going to be a lot more people out this year than they were last year and the 2 years prior. Okay, guys, thank you for showing up and watching tonight. And I'll see you in the next video. Have a great holiday. Happy 4th of July.